Hey everyone, what's this video about? In this video, I'm talking about Russia's military parade. Russia holds a military parade every year. This is to mark the end of the European War. So, what does the end of the European War mean? The last country to surrender was Germany. After Hitler died, he passed his position on to Admiral Donitz. Donitz surrendered to the Allies, and that's how the European War ended. But that wasn't the end of World War II. World War II ended in August when the Japanese emperor announced Japan's surrender. This is the final battle. All right, let's talk about the end of the European War. This was the Soviet Union back then. Now it's Russia. They see this as their greatest victory. They defeated Germany in World War II. Of course, this victory really was. I won't deny that the Soviet Union's performance was remarkable. They lost so many people. You know, most of the area east of Moscow was lost, including all of Ukraine. All the heavy military industry was located there. How could they manage without that? So, they moved the factories eastward. That's one part of it. The second part is that they really had to rely on the huge amount of supplies provided by the United States. Otherwise, there's no way they could have held on. But in any case, after sacrificing 20 or 30 million lives, they finally fought their way into Berlin. They entered Berlin, and that's why they ended up controlling East Germany. All right, let's get back to this point in time. This was the major victory that the Soviet Union passed down to Russia. They held a military parade. First, I want to say that holding a military parade is really quite pointless. In democratic countries, as far as I remember, only France regularly holds military parades. A parade requires at least a few thousand people, and they have to drill for a long time. I asked US military, they don't march in formation. When they do drills, they just run around in a mess. Because if you want it to look good, it has to be really neat and orderly. Let me tell you, I was really surprised when I saw it. Back then, the Prussian march was the goose step. This will improve the ability to step down. The Russians kick their legs even higher. The way they move their arms and legs is all different. In the past, the Hong Kong police used the British style of marching. But later they switched to the mainland Chinese style. There are strict rules about how to move your arms. These things take a long time to practice. It's really a waste of people's effort and money. All right, let's get back to this time. This time, Putin definitely has to continue. With the Victory Day military parade, he doesn't have many weapons to show off, because weapons were sent to front lines. Last time, he brought out the T-34. Maybe this time he'll bring out some missile shells. Those hypersonic missile casings. The tank has nothing to show that he can still keep fighting. He invited a bunch of countries to attend. That's what I'm talking about today. In the end, Xi Jinping went. Xi Jinping met with Putin. They pledged their loyalty to each other again. The two of them have met over 40 times. And Putin will be going to China later on to take part in China's military parade. I'm saying, if anyone thinks they can use Russia to deal with China, you're way too naive. Don't think those two are dumb enough to let you split them apart. If you split them up, they'd both be done for. China does not have the nuclear support of Russia. China just doesn't have enough nuclear weapons. Russia without China's support. As soon as you target them, their economy will collapse. Do you really think those two are that stupid? Anyway, when Xi Jinping goes to Russia again, it's actually also strengthening his bargaining power in negotiations with the US. That's really what it is. Luck. If you don't listen to me, I'll just support Russia even more, give them even more backing, and create more trouble for you in Europe. And if Russia turns around and supports China, they'll stir up trouble for you in the South China Sea. They've even sent ships to patrol there. This is also making the U.S. In the Sino-U.S. trade war, they need to be a bit more careful and go a bit easier on China. All right, what I'm saying, the result this time is, Zelensky said, after they couldn't guarantee their security, a very serious problem has come up. That's because last year, Zelensky didn't even have the ability to harass Moscow. But that's not the case this time. This year, just this year alone, what he couldn't do last year, Zelensky's drone technology has improved a lot. The night before last, over 400 drones to harass, to attack Russia. It caused 10 airports to shut down. More than 400 drones. Even the Serbian president's plane couldn't take off because there was no airport to land at. Xi Jinping went. Xi Jinping is impressive. This time, I have to give him credit. President Xi really has guts. He made it clear. As soon as you arrive, they're not actually going to attack a head of state, but they specifically targeted airports and the surrounding areas. They can't harm a head of state. You sound the alarm. As soon as they get close, it gets really awkward for you. Awkward situation. What Putin is doing now is actually imitating Stalin in 1941. Back in 1941, under the fierce assault of the German army, Stalin insisted on holding that military parade. It was to boost the morale of the entire nation. But at that time, the German army really didn't have long-range attack capabilities. And let me tell you, when I watched footage from the Second World War, they actually built a fake Kremlin to disguise the real Kremlin. With the technology back then, the plane you are looking down from above, you could never bomb the real Kremlin. They built a fake one a few kilometers away. Back then, there was no GPS for positioning, so you couldn't find it. This time, it's the same thing. This Zelensky, he'll stir things up. He just wants to make sure you can't step down smoothly, and that you can't happily, joyfully enjoy a military parade. Now, getting back to the situation in Ukraine, since this, the European Union has made up its mind and intends to support. They held several meetings to decide that after continuing to go all out against Russia, Ukraine's supply of weapons has indeed become very abundant. Now, they have enough artillery shells to fight. The only danger is that there aren't enough Patriot missiles. Signed the reconstruction of Ukraine. Agreement for purpose. That means supplying this. The United States is willing to supply. Willing to sell Patriot missiles. The biggest shortage is Patriot missiles. Without Patriot missiles, they keep getting hit by Russia, with those missiles causing constant disruption. People die daily. And on top of that, like I said, Russia uses two main tactics. One is long-range missile attacks, specifically targeting Ukraine. Those critical infrastructures. This makes things really tough for Ukraine. There are frequent power outages. The electricity supply is often cut off. The second tactic is to attack the front lines in Ukraine using glide bombs. Glide bombs. Glide bombs. They don't need to enter Ukrainian airspace. They just glide over with precision guidance. These are bombs weighing 1 or 2 tons, used to bomb Ukraine. Fortress on the front line, able to defend. This is something Ukraine finds hard to deal with. So Ukraine's way of responding is Now they have two things. First, their drone technology has become much more advanced, allowing them to strike targets farther away. Second, after modifying their own Neptune missiles, they can now launch them on their own without relying on other people's missiles. That's why Ukraine is able to fight back, even striking inside Russian territory. They're mainly targeting oil refineries and places where weapons are stored. Recently, they bombed Russia's facility storing thermobaric bombs. These very serious thermobaric bombs, because they're a type of large incendiary bomb. When a thermobaric bomb explodes, it sucks up all the oxygen. A person in the circle of death. All dead. They bombed a warehouse like that. Let me take a closer look at the latest situation on the battlefield. Actually, aside from this incident, meaning aside from the damage to their infrastructure, Ukraine's situation has actually reversed recently. Why does Ukraine need to sign a mineral agreement exactly? The reason is, since the US is willing to sell air defense arms to them for it, and the US is also willing to continue providing valuable intelligence and satellite reconnaissance assistance. Without American satellite reconnaissance, ENS provides support, but it's actually not as effective because the US has far more spy satellites. In short, in the US, people are saying, now that Russia wants to keep fighting, should we sanction Russia? This is a big test for Donald Trump, because right now, 70 members of Congress are suggesting who buys Russian oil should be hit with a 500% tariff. If that's the case, at least India wouldn't dare to buy it. India would immediately stop buying. Russia's revenue would drop significantly. Would China, the biggest buyer, still dare to buy if there's already a 100% tariff? 500 more won't make a big difference. It's really not that much of a difference, but if there's any progress in China-US trade, this kind of threat would be very effective. At the beginning of this year, when Donald Trump was elected, I already said, well, I said, there should be a ceasefire within half a year. Now there are still a few months left. Russia's only obstacle right now is that Russia's demands are unrealistic. Why do I think there will definitely be a ceasefire? At the time, my thinking was the same as Donald Trump's. As long as the US doesn't supply weapons to Ukraine, any support from Europe alone simply wouldn't be enough. So Ukraine would be forced to accept all the humiliating terms. That's not the case now, because the EU is giving its full support. EU, 800 billion euros. 800 billion euros. And that's just Germany. They've come up with 600 billion euros. So they've strengthened their military industry. I've said it over and over again. The European stocks I bought have gone up by more than 20% in just 2 weeks. Those who are patrons already know this. Yesterday, for the patron friends, I specially came online. I was absolutely thrilled. My 2 main stocks have risen a lot. Everyone made a lot of money. But that's just an aside. Those defense industry stocks, especially the German defense stocks, have performed extremely well. Let me tell you, these 2 countries will definitely buy a lot. Germany's military. And it's not just the German military buying German defense stocks. All of Europe will be buying them, and buying from Germany. These defense products. It's just that the Germans make them so well. With over 100 years of history, for example, gun barrels, even the Americans have to buy them from Germany. So right now, Europe's rearmament is definitely beneficial. In this situation, Russia. What exactly was Russia betting on? At that time, they put everything they had into attacking Ukraine. Basically, they were betting on gaining the upper hand on the battlefield and then waiting for Trump to take office so that they could get what he wants. Now, Trump is already putting real pressure on Ukraine. There's still one more thing. Wait. What is he waiting for? What is Putin waiting for? If the U.S. isn't like Biden, at that time I supported Ukraine a lot. If U.S. doesn't give aid Ukraine, can Ukraine actually hold out? That's the question. He needs to wait a month or two. Discover Ukraine's military hasn't weakened, but has actually grown stronger. Then he'll give up. That's what this video is mainly about.